Okay, I have like 39 asks in my inbox and I got sick of typing them out. I typed out a few of them, but I decided I'm going to try to knock a few of them out in video. If I can get 5 or 6 of them done, then that'll probably be faster than typing them out. So let's start with what we have here. So this ask says, I'll start with saying that I'm a 90% believer Beth is still alive, but there are some things that just do not really make sense for me in some episodes, but could also be lazy or bad writing. Anyway, the main one I really overthink is the shot of when she was shot by Dawn. It looks like a pretty bad head wound, and that's why I initially thought she was dead and gone until I found your page. I'm so glad you did. But do you have any explanation or theory about how she could have survived the headshot? I'm sure you get this a lot, but just curious since lately I've been watching a lot of Bethel edits and that shot always gets me. Let's start with that before I go on to the second paragraph. So yes, we are pretty sure that she survived the headshot. Now, we've very conclusively discovered that she could have survived the headshot. The problem is that there's a lot of misconceptions around getting shot in the head. Sure, lots of people die from it. That is definitely true, and that's why most people think that she would have died. But most people also don't understand the way the brain works and the way the anatomy is put together. You don't feel pain in your brain in the same way you do in the rest of your body, because the brain is what makes the rest of the body feel pain. Okay, it's the path that carries signals to and from the body, but there aren't nerves that go directly to the brain. So there are plenty of people who get shot in the head and walk away with almost no repercussions at all. Just look it up. Like, there are plenty of cases of that. So the main thing that determines whether you survive a shot to the head or not is the artery. If you nick the cerebral artery, it's almost as big as the femoral artery in your leg, and you are going to bleed out really, really quickly. And because it's such a big artery, it's very, very easy to nick that artery. So I don't know what the numbers are, but I would say the majority of people who get shot in the head, that artery is hit, and therefore they bleed out and die. And that's why so many people say, oh, well, if you get shot in the head, you die. Okay, but they're not taking into account what actually leads to your death when you get shot in the head. Now, on the flip side, if you don't nick the cerebral artery, it's almost not even a terrible injury. I mean, it's still considered a traumatic injury because it's a head injury, but I mean, you're not going to bleed out very much, and you're not going to feel a whole lot of pain. There are people who get shot in the head, go to the doctor, get the bullet taken out, and walk out of the hospital the next day. Okay, it's just not that big a deal. So then the next argument becomes, well, yeah, but this is fiction. They might not be being that careful with it. Well, we actually know that they are. Nicotero has told us many, many times that they actually have medical consultants on the show. And, when they're telling us about it, they're talking about walker bites and things. They'll say, well, we have these consultants so that when we have someone get bit by a walker and, one of those really disgusting shots where you see the ligaments and the, arteries being hit and there's blood everywhere, they want that to be as hyper realistic as they can make it. So they have medical consultants there to make sure that they're getting it right. Okay, so you better believe that when they choreographed this shot, when Beth gets shot in the head, they were paying very close attention to what was realistic and what was not. Okay, so whether they were going for a lethal shot to her or one she would survive, trust me, they got it right. They had medical consultants there. They were very, very careful with the details in whatever it was they were trying to accomplish. But, like I said, there was simply not enough blood shown for her to have nicked her cerebral artery. In fact, we have had people who really are medical people in real life, doctors and nurses and things, look at this and go, are you sure that character's dead? Because that was not a critical head, or a lethal head wound. Because they've seen it before. They know that if the blood is not there, then that person is going to be okay. And, you might say, well, yeah, but we did say blood. Like you said, it is very disturbing. It is that shot where where it comes out of the back of her head. I'm not denying that. It's difficult to watch. But we really didn't see blood to the extent that we should have seen if it was going to be a lethal head wound. It would have been buckets and buckets and buckets. And maybe it wouldn't have come out at first. It's one of those things, after she gets shot, it will start to leak out, but it will do it pretty quickly. So if she really had nicked her cerebral artery, when Daryl picked her up, he would have been covered, like shoulders to knees, buckets of blood, because it would have been like all the blood in her body leaking out. So the little bit we saw, the little spray we saw, it's just not that big a deal, you guys. I mean, in terms of volume, it was like I don't know, 4 ounces or something. That's not enough to kill a person. It's just not. So she 100% could have survived that headshot. Even though it looks super disturbing, I get it. But it was very, very survivable. And if the special effects people and the writers were being really, really careful to make sure that it was medically correct, then I'm telling you, they were going for something she could have survived. Okay? Hope that helps. The next part, I've also seen a bunch of theories that say Beth might have lost one eye, but I honestly don't think so. The only moment we see Beth after she gets shot is when Daryl is carrying her out of the hospital. It's a brief moment, and we really do not get to see much, but from what we can see, it doesn't seem like either one of her eyes has been damaged. Well, it just depends. I mean, if a bullet, sometimes even though it looks like a bullet goes straight through, it can actually ricochet around in the skull. And I know that seems like it would do a lot of brain damage, and sometimes it does. But if her eye was damaged, it's not going to be like Carl's eye wound. It might not be obvious, and it still could have been damaged on the inside. Now, all of that said, I'm not sure she's going to have a messed up eye either. She might. But I think the main place that comes from is the Sirius symbolism, because the Sirius symbolism is a dog with one eye. And now we have leaked photos and proof that Troy is returning to Fear the Walking Dead, and he does have a damaged eye. So think about that. In terms of the Sirius symbolism is somebody, it's just like resurrection or return symbolism. So it's somebody who goes away for a time and then comes back. That's really all Sirius is, because the dog star is an actual constellation, and they used to see it in ancient Egypt, and they could tell the seasons by it. They would see it on the horizon, and then it would disappear for a certain amount of time. And when it came back, they knew that the seasons were changing. And, you know, it had to do with the flooding of the Nile, and they would use that to water their crops and all kinds of things. So we have this person, Troy, that everybody assumed was dead, and it definitely looked like he got killed. I mean, he got hit in the head with a hammer. That's rough. That's a rough one. Now he's back and he's got a missing eye. So whether Beth has a missing eye or not, the point is that Troy is a Sirius character. He is a return character who was resurrected, even though he didn't probably literally die. He survived, and they just made us think that he died. In the eyes of the audience, it is a symbolic resurrection. And we saw the one-eyed dog around Beth and Daryl. Now, Daryl has never disappeared, so he's not the Sirius character. It has to be Beth. That's what I'm saying. And Troy is just a confirmation of that. So anyway, I'm getting a little off target, but the point is, a lot of people think that her eye is going to be gone, and I think that comes from the Sirius symbolism. It doesn't necessarily mean that she'll have that. Maybe she will, maybe she won't. But it's a possibility, and we'll just have to wait and see. Okay? Thank you so much for your question. On to the next one. I've been watching this guy's video for a while. He does episode analysis of TWD, and he finally covered Coda and called it the most disappointing episode in the whole show, saying that Beth's death was terrible and pointless and so much wasted potential, etc., etc. And there's the URL if anybody wants it. I'll link it up below this video. I just thought it was nice to see even non-TD recognize how utterly stupid her death was and how pointless and bad writing it was. Of course, we know it's not bad writing to an extent, as she will return and it will all make sense. Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's not just people who ship Beth and Daryl, and it's not just us TDers. We're kind of the conspiracy theorists of TWD. We're not the only ones who think that. In fact, I've heard it said before that even people who, again, are just not us, there are plenty of the GA, the general audience, who see that shot of him carrying Beth out of the hospital as the most iconic shot of the entire series. And this is what I mean when I say that when Beth shows up, 99% of the fans are going to be on board. Because as soon as she does, that's going to signal, oh, okay, she's back. There was a romance going on there. There was something going on there. We need to see Daryl's reaction when he realizes she's still alive. I mean, the only people who will not be on board are certain ships who do not like Beth because they like Daryl with someone else. Those are going to be the only ones. And, this is a little bit off topic, but me and my fellow theorists were talking the other night about, there was an article that came out about the ratings for Daryl Dixon, the spinoff. They're phenomenal, you guys. It has the highest rating of any of the spinoffs and of most of the regular seasons of TWD. The only one that beat it, I think, was season 5, and then it was kind of neck and neck with a few of the other ones, which season 5 was where Daryl was looking for Beth, I'm just saying. Okay, so all of those Carol shippers who were going to take down the series by not watching because Carol wasn't in it, it has the highest ratings of almost anything in the TWD universe or that has ever been done. So people, despite how loud some of these shippers are online, they love Daryl, they love his story, and when Beth shows up, they are going to be on board. You don't have to worry about that, okay? So thank you for your post, and I will link up this video if anyone wants to watch it. All right, next one. That ask about normally, that's one I posted last week, made me think about that turtle Norman said he gave Emily with a love note. I don't remember exactly where that turtle was from, maybe from the house in Still. Do we know some other detail about that? No, we really don't. It was from the house in Still, you're right. So that house just had a whole bunch of junk in it that I think the writers and the set creators just threw all the junk they could possibly find in there because it was supposed to look like a mess. And then they really did burn it down. So everything that was in there really did get burnt. And Emily found this little turtle. I think it was a little ceramic turtle. And she just thought it was cute and was messing around with it while they were filming. And so Norman got it for her, kind of saved it from the fire so that she didn't lose that and gifted it to her, which was sweet. It was a sweet story. Beyond that, we don't really know. The turtle has become kind of a symbol for them. And you know, it's one of those things that I'm really curious about, and I hope that Gimple will address it eventually, because I would almost think that that is our doing. Like, we think of it as a symbol for them because of that story, but we've seen turtles in the show, and they have been used symbolically. And then there's the fact that they went out of their way to tell us that story. Like, they wanted us to know that the turtle had some symbolism, you know, that he had saved that for her. So we really don't know a whole lot of detail about that. I assume Emily still has it. But really the story is basically all we have on that. I wish we had more. All right. Thank you for the question. Next one. Do you think Maggie ever wondered why Daryl was so devastated about Beth's death? She knew they spent time together, but still. She may have, but I think that at the time, Maggie was so wrapped up in her own grief. I mean, remember that everything that happened in 4B and 5A happened really quickly, even though it felt like a long time for us because we had like a 8-month wait in between season 4 and 5. Chronologically, it had not been that long between when Maggie lost her father and when she lost Beth. So I think she was in a very dark place, and she probably wasn't paying that close of attention to Daryl at the time. Beyond that, I think this is true of a lot of the characters, that they just figured, it kind of goes into what I posted a few weeks ago about why Carol asked him, she saved your life too. That's the characters trying to figure out what he was feeling, because he had such a heavy emotional reaction, and they don't see that from him very often. So I think they gleaned that there was something going on there, but I also think that maybe they thought he felt like he had some sort of duty to Beth, and, you know, just the fact that he is a protector, and she was taken from him, and maybe he had some guilt over that and thought it was his fault and that it was his kind of duty to save her, and then it just went so wrong. I think a lot of them maybe thought that was the reason he was grieving so hard, and, you know, it wouldn't have necessarily occurred to them, especially Maggie, that there was anything more emotional, more romantic going on there. So that's what I would say. Maybe even if she did wonder, she probably thought it was something like that, but I think she was too much in the throes of her own grief to even really wonder. And then by the time she came out of that, it was all water under the bridge, or at least it would have seemed that way to her. So obviously this is just me conjecturing. We don't know that for sure. Hopefully they'll address it at some point. I mean, maybe we'll get an answer to this question when we finally see the missing 17 days, but I don't know. So yeah, I wish I had a better answer for you on that, but that's what I got. Okay, I'm going to show you guys this one because it's funny. This is a hater ask that got sent in, and there's 2 of them actually, and I haven't actually deleted them yet. One of them says, you keep saying Beth is coming back, and every time you confidently predict her return, it falls flat on its face or turns out to be Morales. You're just a 2-bit penny preacher who thinks they are a prophet. Shame on you. I gotta say to this hater, kudos on the excellent grammar there. And apparently they think Morales turned more than once, because every time that I've predicted Beth will come back, it's been Morales. Yeah, I have to laugh at some of these haters and the things they send in. It is true that we've predicted her return for a long time, and she hasn't shown up yet. I'll give you that. But that doesn't mean we're wrong. It just means we're going to be right eventually. Let me find before oh yeah, here's the other one. This was a response to something that I don't know if it was something I remember saying this. Either I wrote it or said it in one of the videos. And I said that a lot of the haters didn't like Daryl anyway. So, you know, it wouldn't be a good idea to trust what they said, because if they hate him anyway, then obviously, you know, what they're saying isn't the most valid thing. Anyway, so then they wrote in right after I said that and said, you dismiss as invalid the opinions of anyone who isn't a Norman TWD fan? Well, that's very reasonable, LOL. But the truth is, yeah, I do. I mean, not in general for the world, but if you hate Norman anyway, then why should I care what you say about him because I love him? You know what I mean? So anyway, this is the kind of hate mail that I get, and it's really quite hilarious to read. Okay. The next one says, a person who attended a screening last night said Carol is in a flashback scene, and we know she shows up at the end of episode 6. That's not really a question. I'm not sure what they're asking there. We know that she's in a flashback. I don't know. I'm still a little bit on the fence. Do we really know that she shows up for season 6? I know that people keep saying it's been confirmed, and maybe it has. It doesn't really bother me either way, but I don't know that we 100% have confirmation of that. And as I've said many times before, I almost kind of hope that she does, because the two of them together looking for Beth, Daryl and Carol looking for Beth, would be a replay of Consumed, and that would tell me that we're that much closer to finding her. So I don't know. I almost hope she does, but I feel like this person is like trying to contradict something I said and are saying, yeah, but we know Carol's going to show up. Well, I don't think we actually know that 100% until we actually see her show up. But even if she does, okay, yeah, I'm cool with that. I'm down. Just understand that it doesn't mean that Carol and Daryl are getting married if she shows up. Okay. One more and then I'll wrap this one up. So this is a real... Not sure if someone has already picked up on this, but I just saw this on Instagram and find it very interesting that the 3 moments they chose to highlight Daryl with other people, aside from the opening scene, were Merle, Rick, and Beth. That's right. This was... You guys, I'm so behind on these asks. Some of them are 2 weeks old. This was when the AMC account was promoting the pilot episode of the Daryl Dixon spinoff. And they showed scenes when he first met Rick. They showed scenes with him and Merle, and then they showed one of him and Beth. You guys probably remember this. A lot of us were posting about it. I didn't finish reading. So as you've previously said in other posts, they really are keeping hints of Beth on our minds. Really think about that, guys. I mean, if they were trying to highlight Daryl's journey in general, you would think that we would have seen him with other characters, especially Judith, especially Carol, who he's had a lot of screen time with and we know is one of his best friends. Maybe Aaron, right? He had a lot of screen time with Aaron in season 5. And it makes sense that it's Merle because that was his brother. And, that's part of his history and it informs who he is. So, and then of course Rick, because they've become brothers and him and Rick's relationship is one of the most important in Daryl's life. But again, if we're going by that, why don't we see him and Carol? Or even him and Michonne? Or him and Judith? He has really important relationships with a lot of the people on the show. Him and Rosita were together a lot the last season. But the only 3 they show are Merle, Beth, and Rick. Merle makes sense, even though he's dead. Rick makes sense because he's still alive. So where does that leave Beth? You know what I mean? It's confirmation that is a really important relationship still. And the other thing that I would like to point out is that he mentioned Merle in the first episode when he was talking to Isabel. He mentioned his brother. Actually, you know what? He mentioned him in the second episode too, when they talked about Mork and Mindy. So does that mean that we're also going to get a Beth mention? I'm just wondering. I'm just saying there could be a pattern there. So yeah, thanks for pointing this out, and you're very right. And yeah, kudos to you. All right, I'm going to cut it off there, and I'll do some more tomorrow.